You're listening to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa, the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of Big Blend magazines. And as many of you know, we're traveling full-time on our Love Your Parks towards our quest to visit and cover all of America's parks and public lands. You never know, we might hop borders into other countries, but it's really about showcasing parks, public spaces, and sharing the community stories. And when it comes to stories, a lot of our friends and colleagues have sent us on specific story assignments as we travel. We call them our Mission Possible story series because we're not allowed to not do them. We have to do them. So it's like a treasure hunt across America, right, Nancy? So
fun.
It's fun. Our friend Donna George, who we've been working with her since over 20 years now. She is the owner of the Peanut Patch in Yuma, Arizona, and she assigned us to a farm and agriculture story series. And we thought, well, this is the first story we're starting on this, and we must go to Julian-California. It's just up the road, literally, from the desert community of Yuma that's known for as being like the winter lettuce capital of the country. They grow a lot of lettuce, leafy greens, artichokes, that kind of thing, cantaloupe. But also known for growing medjool dates, those royal medjool dates out there. But only a couple hours away is this beautiful mountain town of Julian. It's San Diego's mountain destination, and that area is known for apples and wine, all kinds of good food. So if we're going to do that, because that was actually one of our first destinations on the tour, we've got to talk to our go-to person, which is Chef Jeremy-Manley, known as San Diego's sustainable chef. He's back with us, and he's the executive chef and owner of Jeremy's on the Hill California-style bistro in Julian, known for farm-to-table fare. So check them out at jeremysonthehill.com, and you can see Jeremy's recipes if you go to blendradioandtv.com. So, Chef Jeremy, how are you doing?
Lisa, I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Nancy and I are excited to have you back on here and to talk about, normally we're talking recipes with you, but Jeremy, I mean, we've known you for what, 20, we've known you since you were a kid. How about that?
20, 25, 2 decades.
I know, man. How did that happen? At one point you weren't allowed to have wine. Now you are allowed to have wine. That's how we look at it, right? It's funny. I remember when visiting your house out in Pine Hills, again, this was 2 decades ago, speaking of wine and alcohol, I'll never forget the first introduction I ever saw to, I believe it was Jack Daniels and water and ice. Is that what you two used to drink? You could do that.
It's one of those childhood memories.
Yes. It was a summer cooler. See, we're going to Kentucky's bourbon country next. And now Jack Daniels is Tennessee, but Jim Beam is Kentucky. And over there they have what's called peapaw tea, and they also serve bourbon slushies. And so that's our practice, Jeremy, for going on the bourbon trail.
I love it.
Yeah, you got to put a little 7 and 7 in there or whatever. Yeah, it's a little summer cooler out there. But we used to have a lot of fun up in Julian. And, when we started our tour, you were one of the very first stops. And Julian is, very popular for apples and apple pie. And it's interesting because you go back to the history of Julian as a gold mining town. And they said when the gold panned out, the apples came in. And so the community changed what it was doing, economically, and started growing apples. But I think you've always told us it was actually, isn't it pears and peaches before the apples?
Yeah, pears came prior to the apples. I don't know the complete details of how, who, what, where, when, why, but there was a spot right down the road from Julian called Manzanita Ranch, which was half a mile from the restaurant Jeremy's on the Hill. And behind Manzanita Ranch, there used to be orchards of pear trees. And I think it was 30 plus years ago, maybe 35 years ago, they tore out all the pear trees when the property changed hands. And they never replanted pears or apples. There's a whole bunch of smaller apple orchards that are staggered around Julian, anywhere from 5 apple trees up to 6,000 apple trees, just depending on what part of Julian you visit to. And one of the great things about Julian is, Julian's known for apple pie. Well, now we have, they say that with any economic boom or economic crisis, everybody drinks. So now not only do we have Julian known for great apple pie, but we have some local cideries that are actually using the local apples from Julian making hard cider. And we have Julian Beer Company, who's beginning to put themselves on the map. And then again, Tom Nickel from Nickel Beer Company, plus the restaurants. There's a couple of us now that are trying to use more local and more indigenous ingredients to the area. So it's just nice to see the community that was once known for basically nothing more than an apple pie beginning to spawn and create more local and more sustainable practices to kind of set itself apart out on the map.
I love that. And so when you talk about the brewery, because I know you've got vineyards, right? So like Mangini Winery was the very first winery that was using grapes grown in Julian, and they've got apples on their ranch too, in vineyard area. But what about when it comes to beer? Are the brewers using local hops?
There are. Not for all their beers, but with the beer industry, a lot of beer is now made in pellet form. Well, I should say the hops are made in pellet form for larger volume and larger scale and easier cleaning. Starby Ranch Hop and Bison Farm is right down the road from us, and Nickel Beer Company, they do a few fresh hop beers every season when it's hop season, which parallels to its relative plant cannabis. So when cannabis is blooming, hops are blooming. So Tom Nickel does a fresh hop beer. He does a couple of them.
Oh, wow.
So what they do is, they add, I think it's after, I've never made beer before, but I think it's like once it starts to boil or something happens, and they add a bunch of fresh hops and they steep it like tea for a little bit of time, and they pull them out, and it just adds a different flavor profile. It's like that danky hop flavor of the hop becomes more.
Wow, that's a whole different thing that I've never, really heard of. But hey, how cool is that? Because it's local.
In the nose and on the palate. Yeah, and what's so great is like there's these movements going on everywhere in the country, and it's just nice just to like go and travel and take it all in with a grain of salt, and just don't be like too overly critical on what you try, but instead like step back and just observe and be with it. Like see what the chef or what the vineyard or what the brewer is trying to do in their natural habitat and in their natural area, and just like take notes and enjoy it. And then when you go to the next small mountain town, and you go to the next tourist destination that you have lined up on your vacation, compare and contrast and see what they're doing. And it's just really cool that all these little patches of small towns and different national park areas and different travel destinations, everybody has their own interpretation, but it's all doing the same thing. But again, it's just different interpretations, different styles that are
what's local. Like we just came back from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and over there they celebrate Christmas year round because they love their green chilies, right? We always hear about patch chilies and green chilies in southern Colorado and in New Mexico. So when you go there, they give you a choice. Do you want chili rojo or chili verde? Do you want green or red? But in Santa Fe, not only that, they say, well, you can have both, and that's Christmas. So a lot of times you'll order your enchiladas as Christmas. And so you can have Christmas year round. Well, that's their thing, because of
pretty.
And they've got such rich Spanish and Mexican and Native American roots there that the food is really fascinating, because even the chocolates, they'd go back to like, this is how the Aztecs and the Zapotecs drink this, and the Mayans do this over here. So you're having, like when you have chocolate, they'll have like a European drinking chocolate, then you'll have like, here's your Zapotec drinking chocolate, and it's pure chocolate. And the one chocolate I had was all chili and chocolate, drinking chocolate. And I think it was like I think it was a Zapotex. And I swear, Jeremy, I was going to get up and just like be Rambo, or Rocky, run the stick. Dude, I was just like, all right. But apparently that was exactly the feeling for the warriors back in the day. That's what they drank to fuel themselves for battle. And I could totally feel it, dude. I was like, ready, let's go.
Yeah, she's all like that. And I had rum chocolate.
So you figure.
I was feeling.
Yeah. So, but in Julian, how many you've got? So you've got hard cider. You've still got local cider, right? So I know in town there was like a
Correct.
Local farm stands and So when visitors come up, can they buy local produce? And is it stretched beyond the orchards? Do you get any vegetables and things like that?
There's a place up here, great concept. They've been open now for a couple of years, called Cross Family Farms. And we're working on a couple of farm dinners with them. And what I love about their concept is as you walk onto the property, you literally walk by everything that they're growing. So what we're planning on doing is people come in, they arrive, then they kind of walk through the farm and pick a couple of the elements that we're going to be serving them for dinner that night. And then separately, we prepare like a 3 or 4 course meal that they all sit down at a farm style table with music and carriage rides and hay bale rides, and everybody just kind of gets around and eats. There's still, let me think, there's a couple stands that are close to the area that are still selling local produce year round. One of them is Wynola Flats. There's another one about 6 or 7 miles down the road from the restaurant called Trummer's Shack, and they do local honey. They do a few other things that they can get their hands on, kind of like heirloom crafty products that are, what am I trying to say? You can't buy them in large bulk. You can't buy them in bulk because it's just, it's like people who make these elegant little things. They're not meant to be like mass produced. So
Yeah,
they have some really unique stuff there.
Yeah, specialty produce.
Yeah, and then other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I know we have, there is some wild produce that grows around Julian. We have wild mushrooms, we have blackberries, asparagus. The miner's lettuce grows everywhere.
Wow. So you can do harvesting, like foraging, I should say. Go out foraging and try that. Now, what about, in the restaurant for you? I know that there's a lot of different events Julian does, like they have the Sip of Julian, usually in the end of July. I think it's the first weekend of September is always the annual Grape Stomp Festa. That's been going for over 20 years. And then like Apple Days, like in the fall, everybody comes up. But to me, it's year round because even like lilacs, that's part of agriculture and, farming. In the spring, up for lilacs, and that's awesome. That's one of my favorite things about Julian. Yeah, it's so pretty. It smells good. Yeah, but what about the restaurant? I mean, do you source a lot of local ingredients? I know you do farm to table, but like, is it all pretty much San Diego as much as you can do, or do you get local?
We do as much as we can. We actually, I'm working with this gal who, she owns a cattle farm about 7 miles down the road from the restaurant. And she's been taking her cows up to be slaughtered at a USDA plant. So we're actually carving out a section of our menu where it's Moretti Ranch beef. And we're kind of like showcasing her and her family's farm. Because again, it ties in with our philosophy. It's a grass-fed beef program.
Nice.
Yeah, and then and then we're still working with a couple of the produce companies local to the area. San Diego Seafood, we're trying to bring in as much local seafood as possible. Creameries. We have a gal in Ramona who makes her own cheeses.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, we're keeping it as local as possible. Again, I always tell people this. My sister's husband is a farmer. He laughed at me the first time I told him this, but he started to understand it as he saw how things work in a small town. But I always tell people we practice practical sustainability, where we do our best to get as much local as we can, and then we outsource from there. It gets to a point where, if you're bending over backwards to try to get your hands on something and somebody doesn't meet you in the middle, or it's not a consistent product, and the customer suffers. And that's kind of the number one concern and the number one priority. So again, our philosophy is practical sustainability.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think if it's not practical, just even in personal life, people aren't going to move forward. And then things aren't, the more you practice that, the more practical it'll get, and more openings will happen as as things develop and we go back to our roots. Really, that's really what it's about.
And just naturally or like organically growing like those relationships with people instead of forcing relationships, or instead of like trying to create something out of nothing, like more like just as things become to be, as they come to fruition, then, start working and building those relationships. But
integrity.
There's so much time and energy that goes, there's just so much time and energy that gets put out when you work in a restaurant that, your time really is valuable. So it's like, I'm willing to spend X amount of hours per day doing this, X amount of minutes per day doing that. I'm not going to spend any hours of the day doing this because it's wasted energy. So it's kind of like, it's not just for like the health and the well-being of the restaurant and the philosophy, but it's also for the employees and the management and the people who run the business.
One thing I wanted to ask, Nancy, we Temecula is a backyard. We like Temecula area too, and I know that that's technically Riverside County, but who's counting borderlines or looking at that? Who cares? to me, it's like isn't that like a rich region to source from is Temecula area for not only wine, but olive oil and fruits and vegetables and everything.
Absolutely. They have a great growing climate weather up there. Anywhere you grow grapes, I feel like has a great growing weather for agriculture in general. Yeah, Temecula is booming. I think, like you said, their olive oil. I know they have a couple of farms up there. As far as deliveries, though, we don't work. I wouldn't know how to get my hands on products to Julian. It's hard when we're in such a remote location that it's in order for it to be profitable for the farmer, there has to be like minimums, and there have to be multiple customers that purchase from them to do deliveries. And yeah, I mean, Temecula is about an hour away. So if you were to think about, driving, paying somebody an hour each way plus wear and tear and insurance, and it adds up.
That's interesting.
But, yeah.
I think that's something, Nancy, that us as the diners need to understand too, don't you think? Is this other side of the farm?
Yeah, I mean, and how far away are you going to still call it local too?
Yeah,
it's like local is Julian and Ramona, but if you start going 2-3 hours away, then you can't really call it local, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jeremy, thank you for joining us and give us a little insight of not only, what grows in Julian, which it seems like it's starting to grow. Even you can't overgrow in Julian, but it seems like it's growing, and also to give us the insight of what it's like to be on the other side of, be in the kitchen and run a restaurant that's farm to table, which I know is not easy. So thank you for joining us, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on the show, ladies, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
All right, you take care, everybody. Again,
Bye.
go to jeremysonthehill.com and you'll find his recipes, Jeremy's recipes there, menus, and also they have special dinners, special wine pairing parties, and all kinds of good things. So weddings, they do weddings and catering and all kinds of great stuff. So check it out at jeremysonthehill.com. And thank you, Donna. We did another story for you.
Hi, this is Donna George from the Peanut Patch in Yuma, Arizona, saying congratulations to Lisa, Nancy, and of course Priscilla on completing another farm story for the Love Your Parks tour.